This is the story of Catherine II, a woman who, from her humble beginnings as a German princess, came to be Russia's longest reigning, most powerful Tsarina. Her thirst for knowledge, lust for men, hunger for power, and passion for Russia made her a truly exceptional leader, therefore earning her the title Catherine the Great.
Born Sophia Augusta Frederica, she was a German princess from Stettin. She was neither rich nor powerful, but her father, on seeing her intelligence, made sure she had the best of educations from French tutors. In Russia, the Empress Elizabeth was looking for a woman suitable to marry Peter, the next in line to be Tsar.
She wasn't too powerful or rich, but her father was a general in the army, and her mother had connections with royalty. This made her a more acceptable wife in the eyes of Elizabeth. Her knowledge of French also impressed the Empress, because it was the language of the Russian court.
At age 15, she was summoned to Russia by the Empress Elizabeth. There she used her powerful people skills to curry Elizabeth's favor. Her potential husband, though, was rather disappointing.
Peter was ugly. He was a puny, sickly man, and he really wasn't very, intelligent. Ironically, although he was in line for the Russian throne, he was infatuated with Frederick the Great of Prussia. He spent his time reenacting Frederick's battles with toy soldiers, and as Tsar, he dressed his army up in Prussian uniforms.
Despite Peter's shortcomings, Catherine was determined to marry him and thus gain power. In order to do this, she needed to prove herself to Elizabeth and to Russia. She applied herself to learning Russian and converted from Lutheranism to Russian Orthodoxy. At her conversion, her name was changed from Sophia to Catherine. Prussia and Russia were at odds during this time in the 7 Years' War. The court became filled with spies and suspicion. Catherine used her diplomacy and charm to avoid the distrust and backstabbing that was becoming rampant. Finally, at 17, she and Peter were married.
The marriage was even worse than she had anticipated. They had been friendly before, but after their marriage, Peter began to really hate her. On their wedding night, he came to bed 5 hours after her and went straight to sleep, ignoring her. There was absolutely no love between them, so they found it in other places. He had an affair with a lady-in-waiting, and Catherine had an affair, as well as a baby, with Sergei Saltykov. He was the first in quite a long line of lovers.
Catherine spent the years before Peter became emperor educating herself and forming connections with powerful people. One, with whom she fell passionately in love, was Gregory Orlov. He was to prove instrumental to her rise to power. The Empress Elizabeth died in 1762, and Peter rose to Tsar without opposition.
As Tsar, Peter's failings became truly apparent. His love of Prussia was highly inappropriate, and it stirred up a lot of resentment toward him. The Orlov brothers, the oldest of whom was in love with Catherine, used their military connections to remove him from power. It is unclear whether Catherine was involved in the plot to arrest and kill him. I personally believe that she was, because it was resulting in her becoming Empress of Russia.
The Russian people welcomed Catherine as the new empress. She was clearly a far more capable ruler than her husband had been. Eager to prove herself as an enlightened and effective ruler, she summoned a legislative commission in 1767. Inspired by her study of Enlightenment thinkers and her correspondence with Voltaire and Diderot, she hoped to bring massive legislative reforms to Russia. However, disagreement between the delegates, as well as the Russian resistance to change, meant that the commission was dismissed without coming to any conclusions. Not long after, in 1769, the Ottoman Empire declared war on Russia. This war proved to be one of Catherine's greatest successes. In a series of conflicts spanning decades, she secured 2 more ports for Russia on the Black Sea and annexed Crimea. Russia also gained territory to the west with the annexation of Poland.
Much of the success with the Ottomans was due to Gregory Potemkin. He was Catherine's longest-lasting lover, and they really were very in love. In order to gain Austrian support, he created fake villages filled with happy peasants, thus the term Potemkin village.
Catherine's enthusiasm for reform and enlightenment was dampened by Pugachev's rebellion in 1773. Pugachev, claiming to be Peter III risen from the dead, organized a great peasants' revolt. Famine and the Russian army soon ended the rebellion, but it had a profound effect on Catherine's rule. Fearful that any leniency would encourage more unrest, she thought no more of giving more liberties to the serfs, and instead gave more power to their lords. In this sense, Russia remained behind most of Europe, where peasants were getting more freedoms and the middle class was on the rise.
Catherine was more enlightened in a cultural sense than in any other. She was a voracious reader, and she read many works by the philosophers. She and Voltaire wrote to each other quite frequently, and she helped Diderot publish his encyclopedia. As empress, she expressed an interest in art, and her art collection began the Hermitage, which is today an incredible art museum, second only to the Louvre. She relaxed censorship and encouraged education among the nobles and the middle class. She also promoted vaccination and inoculated herself with smallpox to set an example.
Pugachev's rebellion, as well as the French Revolution, really scared Catherine. She became more cautious and reluctant to reform. Knowing from experience how easy it was for nobles to unseat each other and take power, she ingratiated herself with them with the Charter of the Nobility. This charter gave them increased rights and privileges over the rest of the population. Russia again gained Polish land in 1793 and 1795, and Catherine continued to rule conservatively until her death by stroke in 1796.
So what do you remember about Catherine the Great?
She was awesome.
Yeah, she was great. She was really cool.
Well, the best thing about her, she was a flirtatious woman.
She was very flirtatious. She had many men.
So she brought lots of new Western ideas into the Russian court. She had some correspondence with Voltaire, I think.
She really pushed forward the idea of getting vaccinated.
She wasn't actually Russian, was she? Wasn't she like a German princess who passed her husband because he was this child who just liked to play with soldiers?
Yeah, he just liked to play with soldiers, and he was just kind of weaselly and gross.
I think the thing that made her the least enlightened was that she didn't really try to change the institution of the government as it was in Russia, but all the new things that she instituted were enlightened. It was just the things that she kept from before that were powerhouse. She was a good entertainer too, she charmed people, she got what she wanted.
Overall, she was enlightened, and she was just a boss.
My care is like my shadow.